All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some intros to some of the guest speakers we have today. We've got a great lineup of people that bring different perspectives and some great experience and knowledge to the conversation. So we have Abi Bosale. He's the co-founder and CEO of Crelio Health. He pioneered streamlining new healthcare diagnostics through technology through his engineering roots at PICT, Poon, and computer science graduate, turned healthcare tech leader with over a decade of experience growing Crelio Health globally. Today, Crelio Health serves more than 1,500 medical labs globally and transacts 2 million medical records every day. We also have Vitaly Gvatkov, who is our CIO here at Lighthouse. And he is a technology expert, an entrepreneur, a computer scientist with over 20 years of experience managing technology innovation, consulting, large-scale IT projects. His recent experience includes design and development of predictive analytical technology for better lab payments for RCM that utilizes big data analytics and computer intelligence to predict payment risk by insurance payers. He did this for BioReference Laboratory as well. He has a product here at Lighthouse called RCM Spotlight that utilizes that technology. Previously, Vitaly served as the CEO of a software company developing cloud-based cancer diagnostic applications with deep learning analytics. His prior experience also includes managing large-scale consulting projects for Fortune 500 companies like Accenture, specializing in business process transformation and implementing of SAP systems, as well as developing 3D analysis solutions for NASA's space shuttle program. Vitaly received his master's in computer engineering and an MBA from Rice University. We also have Jihoon Beck. He's the founder and CEO of Dendi. Jihoon started the company with the mission of being an all-in-one operating system for diagnostic reference labs. He has a diverse background in software development, product management, applications of AI, machine learning, and the financial analytics of healthcare sectors. Jihoon started Dendi in 2020 and has since helped 60 reference labs in the country grow their operation. So thank you guys all for being part of the conversation and being with us. A little bit of housekeeping here. To reduce your chances of buffering, please close any heavy bandwidth using apps that you might have running or things in the background. Most common question we get is, will this webinar be recorded? Can you get a copy of it? Yes is the answer. Do you need to ask for it? No. So don't worry about that. It'll automatically be mailed out to you through email if you've registered for this webinar, which you wouldn't be here if you hadn't. So you'll get a link. Don't need to do anything. You don't need to wait till the end to ask questions. So if you have questions, we're going to be using the Q&A section, which you'll find on the right-hand column of your screen. You can push questions there, and we will try to field those towards the end of the webinar. We may grab a few of them as we go as well if they're relevant to what we're presenting at the time. We will run some polls during this webinar. We encourage you to participate. That's our feedback system to understand what you guys think too. So we'll push those out, and you guys have the ability to respond in real time and see what the peers and other people on this webinar think. All right, so Lighthouse Lab Services, just real quick plug for what we do, because that's how we keep paying the bills and keep the lights on. We are a medical laboratory consulting and recruiting company. We do revenue cycle management. We build CLIA labs. We build 50 plus CLIA labs every year from scratch. And we provide the medical directors for a lot of CLIA labs through the country on a monthly basis. We help validate LDTs, get market access if you're having a hard time getting paid by commercial payers or getting in network. So if there's a issue you're up against in a clinical lab, good chance we have a solution or could point you towards one. So keep us in mind for that, and we'll give you a chance to ask for assistance if that's something you want to connect with us about. But we're going to jump into today to the conversation around AI in healthcare. This webinar is probably overdue. Everybody was doing talks on AI, so I didn't think it was too exciting, but it's just too big to ignore as well. So I wanted to really try to focus it in on how AI is going to affect healthcare, but in the laboratory specific. So all of our guests have really deep lab knowledge today, and so they're going to be able to tie it back. And I think it's going to be a little broader than maybe you think. You might think that it might affect your technology team. I think it's going to affect probably all aspects of the laboratory in your company. So this is some of the conversation that's happening out there right now. And as you can see, as you read through these headlines from major sources, day to day, you'll read a headline about how AI is going to be a wonderful thing that's going to fix healthcare, and the next headline will be how it's going to destroy healthcare and cost you your job potentially. So, a lot of different viewpoints on it. Maybe all of them could be correct. There could be a little bit of all these things. So, we're going to jump into that today and hear different perspectives on how AI is going to affect different areas of the laboratory. So. We're going to start with tackling some questions. I've got maybe 12, 15 different questions. These questions are all generated by ChatGPT. So these are all AI generated questions. When I asked them how we should talk about AI affecting laboratory and healthcare, this is what AI came up with. So I thought that would be appropriate for the day. So we're gonna go with that. And we're gonna start with our first question is, how is AI going to improve the accuracy of laboratory results? And I'm going to direct that one to Abhi.
Thanks, Sean. So thanks for the introduction. And so, we at Kelly Health basically kind of tinker with some of these questions and think about how is that going to change like lab workflows, and how is that going to change like reporting. And a decent part of that is actually can we impact accuracy of medical records or test results, and to what extent. So, some of the things that we see really getting better with AI is, I think, first and foremost, it's essentially like an assistant quality manager always available for you. So, and so it acts like a layer that is always present for checking quality control of your instruments, as well as correlating that with lab results. And ultimately, kind of, you get to understand if a particular test result is like abnormal or not expected to be in the linear range of the instrument. So if the instrument kind of doesn't behave correctly, the AI systems can learn to identify that. And I think in overall, it kind of extends to like a greater goal of like being like a layer of error management in some sort. So it acts like it can understand human errors. It can understand when results get sort of changed from what the instrument kind of reported versus maybe there is a typing mistake. So these sort of things kind of get you can train AI pretty well. We also believe that it can help you contextualize and correlate test results. So if a metabolic panel is having certain set of results, and there are other tests which would kind of correlate very differently, so the AI can really kind of assist or suggest that there is a discrepancy or there is a difference in these two results. I think there's a lot of augmentation that could be done on what medical directors use systems or workflow solutions like ours or others to really augment it to a level where the systems ultimately help them make these decisions better. And we see a tremendous amount of use cases that I think we are pretty excited to kind of go out and test out. There's one other use case that I would like to talk about. I think there are requests we get from some of our customers to kind of use these results to add correlations based on regional or specific geographical results of patients. So if, for example, how like you can actually look at microbiomes in a particular region and then use that to see if this particular test has a very odd microbiome detected. So yeah. So
that's
all in all.
Yeah, so many exciting parts of that, and to think about being able to digest some of those massive amounts of data and find some of that correlation.
Correct.
I think the safety net mentality also is something that everybody could get behind. That we are prone to making errors as humans, and if we can put a safety net behind that to catch those outliers, that seems like something everyone should be able to get behind. Abi touched on workflows a little bit. Jehoon, I wanted to kick over to you. What are your thoughts on how AI can help improve workflows in the laboratory?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, John. And I actually want to add to what Avi was saying as well with regards to test results. If you look at things like reference ranges and look at results in general, what's determined as a positive versus negative result, those things are all determined with a lot of stats and a lot of science in the background. But even things like reference ranges, I mean, at the end of the day, and in terms of scientifically, we've chosen, for example, demographically, valid numbers as kind of like guideposts to determine reference ranges. But something like AI could really help redefine those things based on population data that we have, or even things that these things are arbitrary, and AI may kind of resurface some questions as to how we determine a test result is a certain outcome. And so if out of range, within range, like those are things that are arbitrary at the end of the day. And so maybe we'll find something different with the data that's coming out from AI. But
might make us question why we do what we do a little bit too.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of how AI can improve the lab workflows in general, so I'm not a clinician, so I just touch a little bit about how they can improve test resulting to some degree. But there's actually a lot of I think low-hanging fruit when it comes to especially the clinical lab pre-analytical workflows. That's something that I see a lot of value in. For example, one of the biggest challenges for all clinical labs, especially independent reference labs, is getting paid. And so there's a lot of tools that, low-hanging fruit that can be solved or at least improved with AI workflows. For example, pre-accessioning, you have tools like that already exist, for example, like optical character recognition, OCR, for scanning in insurance cards, requisition forms, things like that. You can do AI for demographics validation. You can use AI for essentially anything that has that uses statistics to determine an outcome that you can use AI for. And I think a big part of it, really, the low-hanging fruit here is pre-analytical workflows, getting the requisition order into a system like an LIS, or getting it out from an EMR. There's a lot of we see a lot of data issues for labs. Either you have missing patient demographic data, or malformed patient demographic data, or you have you're missing a lot of information that allows the lab to make money and improve revenues. There's a lot of that going on. And at the other end, the post-analytical too, you have a lot of tools that are available for like revenue cycle, for example. There's a lot of opportunities to use AI there. So yeah, overall, I think there's just a lot of low-hanging fruit right now in terms of workflows that can be done. And even in the actual lab itself, probably there's, I think Abhi mentioned on it, taking QC data, using AI to run QC data from an aggregate perspective. That's an opportunity. A lot of opportunities there as well. But really what I see as the lowest hanging fruits are pre-analytical workflows.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Smarter, more accurate. That makes a lot of sense. Getting it right on the front end. Say we're sold on, okay, AI is going to help. We should bring it into our workflows. We want to do it. We sign up with someone to bring it in-house. Vitaly, what's the challenge of implementing it? We want to use AI to improve our workflows. What are the obstacles to making that happen?
Right. So all the things that you just said great about AI, they're true. All the terrible things that you've said also true. It really depends whether or not we can utilize it, right? So the way I look at it is AI is like a jet engine, right? It can move your business at the speed of light. It can get you to the point A to point B very fast. But if you put your engine in your lab without appropriate framework for that, it's like putting a jet engine in a horse buggy. You're not going to go anywhere fast. You probably will not go anywhere at all. right? So that's the whole thing. So when we look at it, then sort of can we utilize AI? I mean, that's a wonderful thing, but can you really take advantage of it? So from that standpoint, the framework, the other processes, the automation at the lab needs to be in place. Because if we're still doing copying and pasting from Excel spreadsheets, if we're still doing manual entries like of a patient data, as been mentioned before, and we're making human mistakes doing that, if we're downloading and saving files in 5 different places and trying to reconcile them, if we're emailing each other, on the results and patient data, then there's real use from that wonderful jet engine that we can offer, and advantages that it offers. So at Lighthouse, we serve hundreds of customers. We build labs for people, right? That's what we do. And my job, frankly speaking, is to make sure that we build the lab, we have the infrastructure so we can put the jet engine, and we already doing it for some aspects, like predicting being paid, or where it can be paid. But there is much more extension to it. But first thing first, we got to make sure we have an appropriate sort of vehicle to put this jet engine on, so we can really propel the business. That's basically in a nutshell. That's the problem. You have to put the basics in kind of framework in place to use the AI and take advantage of it.
Makes sense. As we start to think about implementing this, I think that there's a natural human tendency towards fear of, what does this mean for me? Is it going to take my job? You're talking about AI doing some of these things that I do. Does that mean that I'm being replaced? How should scientists in the lab, maybe even pathologists, think about that? Is AI the boogeyman coming for their role, or is it going to help them to be able to do their job better? Anybody want to grab that?
I'd say it depends. It's both, right? If you're doing your job well, you can really take advantage of AI, especially like pathologists is shiny prime example. If pathologists, I mean, they have a tremendously challenging job using the incredible cognitive skills, tens of years of training to find out, the malignant patterns, but then they have to spend a lot of time coding their reports and working diagnosis, things that have nothing to do with their prime specialty. So think about that. We're already using AI to extract and code the pathology reports. It's a tremendous savings, but you have to be kind of skilled in understanding how to use it, and so on and so forth. So it's a kind of an infinite brain for you that can bring you any cases, any patterns, all the knowledge in the world, but you got to be able to use that knowledge. So from that standpoint, if you're not capable, if you're not keeping up, you very well may be impacted negatively by this development. However, if you keep up with your job and kind of stay current with it, it's a tremendous help. It's enormous, tremendous help. So that's my take on that.
Yeah, like Vitaly said, go ahead, Api.
Oh, please. So I agree, actually, what he said. Absolutely agree. There's tremendous value in terms of how people can use it for day-to-day basis. Everything from reducing your day-to-day work, especially the redundant pieces of your work, to kind of helping summarize it, maybe create trends better, or create reports, like internal lab quality reports, or internal lab end of the day job reports. These things could be very well automated by AI.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, to add what everyone's saying, I agree with what everyone's saying. Every time there's been a huge technological shift, the internet, mobile devices, all this stuff coming out in the past 20, 30 years. If you want to go really far back, the Industrial Revolution. And anytime there's a huge paradigm shift in technology, human beings have been pretty quick to adapt. Obviously, there's people that don't adapt, and those people get left behind oftentimes. But I think with this, AI is a tool. We don't have generalized AI at all. We're not even close to it at this moment. I think some people might argue that we are getting closer and closer, but today we're not that close to generalized AI. And so until that happens and they take over the world, I think we should look at AI as a tool. in your toolkit. And I think it just it helps to further abstract your job, so you don't have to do the boring stuff. You can do stuff that's more meaningful. So I think in
Yeah.
overall, I don't think it poses that much danger. I mean, right now there's been a lot of effort made to, for example, like in other industries, like full self-driving cars, for example, right? We've been working on that for years and years and years, but we're not even close to it yet. And so same thing here in the medical field. It's much more regulated here. And so I think, yeah, we're still years and years away from it replacing anyone's job, insofar as there's physical labor needed to perform the job itself.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're a ways out. You bring up an interesting point on the self-driving cars too. I was thinking about this the other day, that just the nature of being inside of healthcare has such a high bar and such a low margin for risk tolerance, that I think it's going to be one of the more challenging places for AI to be accepted, whether it's capable or not. I think self-driving cars probably see that same thing. And there's also this perception that even if the AI was more accurate and less prone to error than a human, I think there's still a resistance to the errors made by a computer versus by a human. And I think we're going to face that same challenge inside of healthcare when you have people's lives on the other side of these results, that even if it's 99.99 accurate, we're going to focus in on maybe those few cases when something slips through, even though as humans we also have this. And so that's a challenge, and we'll have to see what society deems acceptable in terms of error risk, because I don't think anything's ever error free. Yeah. But let's move on to this this next slide here. Vitaly, I'm going to direct this first question to you. How will AI-powered technologies impact cost and accessibility for diagnostic testing for patients? Is everything going to be cheaper? If so, who benefits? Do the labs pocket the extra margin? Insurance companies, the patient? Is it going to get cheaper? And if so,
all of the above, right? So very dear to my heart, this question. I think about it every day in what I do. So really, the impact is tremendous. Different for different types of lab, though. For clinical lab, it's a process improvement. For clinical lab, the technology to actually do the clinical test is pretty amazing nowadays. Those tools, those instruments, those chemistry analyzers, they're fantastic. They can do a test in a very, very quick and economical way. So what makes them long and expensive, it's all the processes around them. That's all the inefficiencies around, entering patient data, validating results, QC, whatnot, all those things. So if you strip all that away, then you can deliver diagnostic tests for clinical lab probably for pennies or dollars on a test, no problem. So the rest of it comes from all the other processes. So that's where AI can help tremendously to reduce this cost. Now, who will pocket that cost? A much bigger discussion. We probably need another webinar on that. So in the current day, it seems like maybe everybody or nobody, but who should really pocket that cost is the patient, in my opinion. So the system needs to move to a different models that really allow the patient to be benefiting from smart decisions about healthcare. As I said, very different, but that's when maybe AI can help. Maybe AI can help patients to be smart about their health decisions and their tests and so on and so forth. So that's for clinical lab. For pathology lab, it's very different, but still pretty tremendous impact. So for pathologists, the problem is that they're great at what we do. We have shortage of them. We have shortage of good pathologists in the country and in the world, for that matter. So that's where I can help free up pathologists from some things that not productive for them, like coding and working with reports and those type of things, but also create this extended brain with the world knowledge of pathology that they can use at the fingertips, and actually really improve the quality and accessibility of pathology diagnostics around the world. Much kind of higher sort of road to travel, again, because the medical oath says do not harm, so that's the kind of the whole medical mentality hinges around that. So that's really has to be proven that it does not harm first before anything else. But still, the impact is tremendous, so mainly from accessibility standpoint for pathologists, because the human still has to be involved. It's a full medical doctor. So I wouldn't say the cost should be a major factor, but quality and accessibility should for pathology. That's my take on that.
Yeah, I think I read a quote by Gary Kasparov, who would play chess against Deep Blue, and there was always this conversation about what will be smarter, who will win, the computer or the human. And what he said, which I thought was interesting, is, you know, it might go back and forth whether a human will beat a computer beat a human, but a human working with a computer will win every time, right? So when
Exactly.
AI is used to augment and paired with the human brain, really big things happen, and that's probably where the rocket fuel is when you mix those two things. So that's a good bridge into our next question for Jihoon. How will it help staff? Like, will it help with training? We've got this shortage going on. We don't have enough scientists. Will it help, people be more productive? They can get to more. What are your thoughts on how AI might augment or assist with laboratory staffing shortage, or just the lab tech themselves?
Yeah, I think it's, as far as the job of a lab tech, I don't know if it changes all that much, because even if a lab tech is actually working in the lab with the AI tools, it's so abstracted at that point. So oftentimes you may not even know that you're using AI in a lot of cases. But yeah, it's very common in I guess we call it human in the loop. That's what we call it. Where in industries where it's a high risk or have a lot of liability, you use AI, like John said, you pair it with the human that has expertise in that space, and then you get the best of both worlds right now. So that's already going on with pathology. You're seeing some softwares out there that are, I think Procia is doing that with some AI powered pathology tools in the market. But yeah, so in terms of how can labs better implement AI, I think really it comes down to understanding what AI can and can't do. And so I think there's a lot of confusion when I talk to folks about what it is and isn't, especially what it isn't. And so what AI is right now is a probabilistic model. It's not some kind of deterministic algorithm that tells you exactly what to do every single time. It just gives you, based on data, a probabilistic outcome. That's really what it gives you. And so you can't just kind of there's a phrase when people say, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so you really want to avoid that, I think. And so it's not some kind of panacea. And so I think you, as a lab person or lab owner or executive, you have to have a really clear understanding of value. It's like, what are you trying to do with the AI tool? And what are the most important use cases that you're trying to get done? And so I think those are the questions that you have to ask yourself when you're trying to implement any kind of tool for training staff or optimizing workflows. It's like, what are the outcomes you're looking for? And then when you find a tool that because there's going to be a lot of tools out there that come out in the next couple of years with AI tools that come out, understanding, okay, like maybe we shouldn't throw the whole kitchen sink at this thing. Maybe we should iterate one step at a time and implement and take small steps towards adopting AI. I think that's probably the right approach. And so, for example, even today, we talk a lot about AI and the implications of AI, but I don't know how many people on this webinar today have actually implemented or at least used ChatGPT once. And so I think taking baby steps and, hey, just try ChatGPT once and see how you like it and see how that potentially affects your lab workflows. I think you start with that, and then you can take other baby steps. Maybe integrate something other workflow, or I don't know, use it for marketing purposes or something like that, and then kind of get your feet wet that way. I think trying to come up with a grand, like, corporate, what's your AI strategy, kind of a master plan is not the best plan for kind of implementing the AI tools that are available.
Yeah, I think you're right. Taking it in bite-sized pieces. I'm going to bring us to the results of a poll that we ran. How close do you think your lab is to implementing AI tools? And we had 24% of people said a long way, years. 31% said we're close, maybe months. Another 30% said we're already using it, and 15% said no plans at this time, not sure. So mixed bag, but it's out there. We got at least a third of people already using it, or a third of labs are out there, and another third on deck. So not too far out months, we're saying. Abi, I'm going to go to you with this next question. How does it affect the patient? We've talked about the business side of the lab, how it's going to affect the scientists, how it might affect our profitability as a lab owner. What about the patient? Personalized medicine, does medicine get better? I think right now, U.S.'s healthcare outcomes are pretty pitiful, especially for what we spend. Yeah. Are we going to start closing that gap and really seeing the patient benefit, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, we all have been trying to take steps towards having personalized healthcare, and I think that has been in discussion for a decade now. But I think AI is that technology that really brings us closer without having to make it too complicated. I see a lot of use cases on helping patients really understand the results better, and also getting a sort of a virtual consultation on the results. Maybe extending it to helping them decide what sort of tests they should do on a routine basis. But that really depends on what state and what sort of insurance you have. We also do see big relevancy or personalization happening on the billing side, where patients can not only understand their qualifications of their insurance better, but also understand what sort of tests or what sort of costs they would be incurring, and just get a general sense of what is it going to look like from a an expense or healthcare cost standpoint. So there are a couple of areas that I think the most exciting area that we find for personalized medicine really is helping patients understand those tests better, and kind of elaborating more on these areas. But there are these other set of wild scenarios that if it works out, it'll be crazy.
Sure. Yeah, I think there's just so much data out there, and maybe some of these correlations might be a big part of that. Kind of brings us into our next question, and I've evolved in my thinking over this over the last couple of years. I've always been an advocate for the value of labs inside of medicine. Everybody knows that quote that's probably overly quoted. 75% of medical decisions are based on laboratory data. I thought, great. AI uses tons of data. It needs data. That's the gas and the fuel for AI. We produce it as the lab. This is our moment. We get to step into the spotlight here and really see the value we drive, because laboratory currently only uses, I think it's 2.6% of healthcare spend goes to the lab, and we're producing 75% of the data behind the decisions. I thought this is it. This is AI is going to be the thing that really puts us in the showcase light. More recently, I've started to think that data that we've produced may just get digested, used by others. I don't know. I can't see a clear path to how the laboratory benefits. Maybe the type of data isn't the type that really drives AI. So I'm going to kick it over to Ji-Hoon, because we had a little bit of conversation about this that I thought was enlightening on the difference between maybe structured data and unstructured, and some of the more valuable types of data for AI. How does the lab benefit, or does it, from AI's appetite for data?
Yeah, so as a lot of people know, I think there's tremendous demand for data, diagnostic data that comes out of the lab. A lot of biopharma companies purchase that. They can't seem to get enough of it. And you have entire companies, for example, Flatiron Health. They have the Onco EMR, and they had a huge data play on the oncology space, and they sold the data to biopharma and whatnot. And so we do know there's a huge demand for that, and that labs are the source of that data. so that theoretically you should be able to get some kind of monetary value from the data itself, as it pertains to AI use cases in AI and whatnot. So far, it hasn't really materialized the way that I think a lot of people expected it to. Even though the lab is a source of the data and the lab is the one driving so much decisions. By the way, John, I asked my wife about that 75% thing, and she thinks it's more like 90% of decisions.
Wow.
She's a physician, so she's telling me maybe it's more like 90% because I look at quantitative data all the time. But yeah, so anyways, there's definitely an appetite for it, but so far it hasn't really materialized because you see a lot of the software, the data resellers and people that aggregate data, they're getting the data from the EMR, the patient chart, which then combines the lab data with all the other encounter data from the physician. And so they're selling all the kind of combined data to the biopharma companies out there that want the data. And so from a kind of the perspective of the lab, it's been a little limited, but I don't think it's necessarily tapped out in terms of opportunity because the lab has information, diagnostic information that perhaps the EMRs don't have. Maybe it has, assay related information that matters. Maybe there's QC data that matters. Maybe there's more, maybe the lab is actually a better aggregator of overall patient data overall, like qualitative and non-qualitative. For example, like as we get into genomic sequencing, right now, like people have talked about, okay, how do we integrate genomics testing into the EMR? Right now, it's really hard to. So maybe there's applications in NGS that pertains to being able to sell. I mean, it's a very sensitive topic because obviously genetic data is very sensitive, but there could be opportunities there for the lab when they get into more and more esoteric or high complexity testing. But certainly, I think there is still value that we not be seeing right now to be able to capture value from the data that the labs produce every day.
And I think it was helpful for me when I spoke to you about the fact that like a lab value, if that's the data, maybe AI is not really needed in order to run a formula, right? Like we've been able to do that with spreadsheets or whatever for a very, very long time. And so just having numbers probably isn't the type of data that's really going to be monetized. It needs to be, whether it's imagery or it's non-structured or it's different types of data being bundled together through the EMR. I think that's where really the value starts to get unlocked, and good for us to think about. I know I talk to lab owners regularly that have a data play where they're going to sell their data, and it normally means I have a bunch of lab values with decimal points, and I'm hoping somebody pays me for those. And I don't know if that paycheck's coming. So starting to think about ways to put your data in a format that's going to be more valuable by pairing it with something else, or maybe it's some of that imagery data for those groups that are doing AP. I think 23andMe was the one that everybody was pointing to as they made this big data play, and it's not playing out real well for them recently, if anybody's been following that in the news. So okay, we're going to move over to our last slide just in the respect of time. And the first question is going to go to Abhi. What steps are being taken to ensure that the AI algorithms used in diagnostic testing are transparent, unbiased, clinically validated? How do you make sure that there's not this, you hear people talk about it, this bias that's built into the training set that carries over and has maybe bad outcomes for patients?
Yeah, John, this is a question that I think keeps all of us up at night. And I think, that really ensures that whatever these solutions get built, you kind of make them as unbiased as possible and as validated as possible. So one of the ways I think, really makes sense is one to have a feedback loop in place. So you have like any sort of AI suggestion or an action kind of has a sort of like a thumbs up, thumbs down at the least, which kind of factors in a minimal feedback loop at least. On top of that, you could offer like flagging solutions where people can really flag unexpected scenarios. And ultimately, I think the more relevant training data that you can actually feed into, the the more like closer to expectation the AI system would be. So I think we really believe that at the stage it is today, AI solutions should be sort of suggesting or sort of aiding or guiding and not really performing the action itself. So I think that would be the right sweet spot where you kind of still get the benefit of like a more quicker workflow, but um, still are cautious on deciding when to let AI do it automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. Those ethical questions lead us into kind of regulatory, the groups that are going to be responsible for that. I'm going to direct this question to Vitaly. What do regulators, whether it's CMS or FDA, who knows who it's going to be these days, what do they need to think about as they try to write the rules for this? I know we're already working with several liquid biopsy companies that have AI algorithms built into how they're reporting out their test results. A little bit of the Wild West right now. Certainly wasn't contemplated in 1988 when the most recent set of CLIA regulations was written. What are the themes and topics that regulators should be thinking about as they try to draft the rules of the game for using AI in the lab?
Yeah, that's a billion-dollar question, right? So the thing is that healthcare market lab market is not a market in the true sense. It's not driven by market forces. It's driven by regulations. It makes it special, for better or for worse. Those regulators, in my humble opinion, are hopelessly outdated by decades. And they driven by best intentions, patient safety, right? Kind of do not harm. That's the rule number one. But they have to come up with the ways to actually catch up with the world and with the current state of affairs. So regulations that put in place, they mean well. They want to protect the patients, but they provide tremendous hindrance to the development, to the progress. So how that should change, it's really up to them. But that's where, so basically, the regulations need to change to be conducive to a kind of quick development without compromising safety. I know it's a tall order, but if we do not make progress there, we will be lagging behind, and probably even more so. And that actually affects patient safety and patient's outcome to start with. So that's a very, very big question that the regulators have to be facing nowadays.
Yeah, if anything, I think that the risks are pretty well flagged in terms of antennas are up. People are concerned. How might this negatively impact things? Maybe even to the too much so that we lose out, right? I was listening.
Exactly. You kind of throwing the baby with the bathtub water, that's
right. There's like some therapy tools that are AI based, like for behavioral therapy, like what you would see with counseling, that completely AI backed and could provide services to people that can't afford to go speak to a therapist. And this is just like an analogy or a kind of like a parallel type offering, but I could see that inside of healthcare too. I heard an optometrist recently where there was an AI backed tool that could do the job almost as good as an optometrist. And the optometrists themselves said, well, it's about like 97% as good as the human. So I didn't see real value in it, but it could be used to reach groups that could never go see an eye doctor, right? And so how do we understand those risks, but not also be so scared of them that we just allow people to
yeah, and also those outdated processes make the healthcare and lab specifically way more expensive than it could be. That's another thing. It adds the cost.
Yes,
sometimes tremendous cost.
Jehoon, your thoughts, potential limitations and risks associated with this. How should we be thinking about it? Should we be thinking about backing down kind of the standard that we hold it to so we can reach more people for the greater good, holding the line, tightening it up? What are your thoughts in terms of how we should be thinking about AI in healthcare?
Yeah, as Vitaly said, regulators, just by nature of their job, are going to be hopelessly outdated in terms of how they think about AI. They're already somewhat outdated in terms of how they think about cloud technologies and modern software in general or hardware in general. But again, it's like Vitaly said, it's not because they're stupid. It's because they have good intentions that and they're conservative about it. Um, I would say that some of the things that are inherent to AI make it really risky in terms of use cases and clinical diagnostics. The biggest one is that AI tends to be a black box, meaning that you put in one input, it's not always going to give you the same output. And so what that means is that when something goes wrong in AI applications, now you don't really know why it goes wrong. Just like if you have a self-driving car, it takes a left turn out of the blue, you don't really know why until you do a postmortem. And so that's one of the limitations and risks associated relying heavily on AI. Obviously, like I said earlier, when all you have is an AI hammer, everything might look like a nail. So you have to be careful with that. But I think as long as folks adopt AI tools and where it's less risky, like you don't want to be messing around with AI all the time for test resulting and whatnot. But if you're doing it for something a little bit less risky, I think it de-risks the entire thing a little bit. And obviously, right now, there's a lot of innovation happening in the field right now, and so a lot of the limitations that are current might go away in a couple of years. And so I think it's really important to continue iterating on how our understanding of AI goes. And yeah, I think right now though that there's risk in kind of having to understand that the AI is a black box, and when it goes wrong, you don't know why.
Yeah, as we clinically validate tests in the lab, LDTs in particular, we're running large batches of samples to make sure that we get the outcome that we expect to get consistently under different standards. The sample's been sitting on the shelf for X amount of time, whatever it is. Do we consistently get the result that we're planning? And I think that as you implement AI into your laboratory workflows, especially the clinical diagnostic side, at a minimum, it should be part of that validation pipeline, right? And we might not fully understand why we're not getting the result, but at least we can test that with a significant end to say, as we put things in one end of the pipe, do they come out as expected on the other end? Is a minimal level of validation that I think we need to do inside the CLIA lab environment. So this is just kind of looking ahead. Clinical lab versus anatomic lab. Where do we think that it's going to have greater impact? Anyone want to opine on which of these is going to change first?
Vitaly?
Well,
That, right?
The answer, well, obviously, the answer is both, right? As we talked about, answer is both in different ways, and there's a different kind of hurdles to cross for the lab, for clinical lab. I think that's more attainable actually, because it's in the lab's hand. I mean, really, if labs catch up with the technology progress and kind of improve the processes, they can really, even today, they can take advantage of latest AI. So by simplifying the process, making them more efficient, and all those good things, getting better paid. But for pathology, it's a big promise, but it's a longer road to success, because that's where it needs to be clinically approved and accepted and weaved into the pathologist training and kind of workflows. And those people don't change very easily. I mean, I worked with pathologists. I mean, they've been trained for 10, 20 years, and they stick to the ways. So that will be a much kind of longer road to the benefits. But again, potentially tremendous benefits for both of those.
Sure. Yeah, I think in my mind at least, the imagery associated with AP seems to be something that we previously hadn't been able to really use our systems to benefit. And the idea of being able to look at millions of images and be smarter because of it.
But that's where it's also kind of coming back to that risks. AI has an inherent problem, very inherent problem. It's trained on existing data. So it can provide the data for you. It can come up with even generative AI, right, based on existing data. But by definition, it's not going to give you answers if the answers haven't been known before. So it's just the way, and we have to understand it. So that's a major risk, right? If that's, I'm using a simple example. If you are kind of training a child, and AI is basically child without content. If you're training AI and saying, this is a picture of a dog, this is a picture of a cat, this is a picture of a dog, this is a picture of a cat, child will learn that very well. But then you show a picture of a tiger, and child will say, what? It's a cat, because it hasn't seen tiger before. So that's something we have to understand about AI fundamentally, right? That's where we have to be very, very careful about it in terms of getting the benefits.
Yeah, as a Lighthouse, we do a lot of recruiting, and I believe it was Google. You guys can fact check me if I'm wrong, but produced a resume screening tool that would replace a recruiter, right? It's going to look and it's going to tell who's qualified, and it's going to be able to just utilize AI to source resumes and make sure that people are qualified. And then as they deployed it, they realized that it was fairly sexist and racist because it felt like executives should be maybe white males. The training set it had looked at was what was out there, right? That was who was in the roles. And so as it tried to find lookalikes, there was that bias. And so great that they caught it. They unplugged it. They didn't roll it out as they saw it, but a great example of maybe it doesn't ever seen a cat or a tiger before, and so it doesn't know that
exactly
what it is. So I'm going to move us over to the Q&A from participants to see if we can get a couple of those in. We're coming up on the hour, so we got about 7 minutes left. I'd love to tackle a couple questions. I see multiple in here that are intrigued by the pre-analytical. Looks like that comment, Jihoon, about how do we use AI to maybe help in the pre-analytical processes is something that people are finding intriguing. Can you talk about that anymore, or give an application of what that might look like to use AI on pre-analytical?
Yeah. So I think one of the easy kind of there's a lot of low-hanging fruit is what I would say. Because we always say, at least in the revenue cycle space, people say garbage in, garbage out. And so a lot of the bad data, frankly, comes from LIS in the lab space. And so if you can optimize the data coming in correct and correct for the missing data or incorrect data, that can really help. And so what I mean by that is there's multiple sources of data coming in to the laboratory via LIS, whether it's an EMR, whether it's a portal of some sort, whether it's manual requisitions. There's the kind of obvious applications for AI or demographics cleanup and documentation. And when you have documentation, you can, when you scan in, let's say a requisition form or scan in like an insurance card, there's tools out there nowadays where you can scan the insurance card and then it will take the text from the insurance card and then transcribe it into a form, and then it saves the data. I've asked around and almost nobody's adopted this in actuality, just because people don't know about it. And when people are told about it, they pretend like it's black magic. And I'm like, well, that's AI for you right there. We call it OCR, or optical character recognition. There's also, things like demographics checking. For example, that's not, when you have a person's name and it's misspelled, sometimes you could run an AI algorithm or something like that to maybe spell it correctly, or autofill addresses or autofill information about the person that may not be possible by a human being. There's also, on the other side of things, post-analytical side of things too, there's a lot of applications there. But yeah, I think the ones I just mentioned are probably the most obvious use cases for AI, and that's applicable today, not 5 years from now. You can do it today. And so those are the ones I'll bring up.
Excellent. Jump into another question. here's kind of a specific case, but maybe we can broaden it to have more application. Brian Kunkel is saying, hey, when we use our TCAN systems, common problem is either the tip can't reach the liquid because the liquid's too low, or goes too far down and hits the bottom of the plate. Can AI help? Is this a application for AI to be able to come in and determine how far the tip is going into aliquot out of a sample? Can it add dynamic ability to some of our existing systems?
I think the answer is, I mean, in some cases it can, but I think in this problem that you have, you might want to talk to the TCAN person to get that resolved.
Yeah, Brian. No, I think it is representative of something that we kind of work with systems that tend to be pretty well coded in a finite way, static way, like this is what it does every time. And there probably is an evolution into it being more dynamic at some point to be able to look at what it's dealing with and adapt probably better than older system have been, but it's probably a little bit ways out. Going through here, think about billing applications. How practical, affordable are these tools for like a smaller lab, right? It seems like AI, that's great, might help LabCorp Quest or a big health system. But what about my small lab? Is this going to be something that's in the realm of possibilities for me to reach?
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. I mean, even today, we're able to package it as a kind of plug and play solution for everybody, lab, big or small. Basically what we do, we can tap into the current flow of your normal document that you exchange with the payers. So that's actually one area that's standardized. There's a federal HIPAA law that requires everybody to send a claim insurance information and payment information exactly the same way, which makes it very, very efficient for us. We can just kind of tap into that flow, and it's really plug and play. Big, small, doesn't matter. There is like pretty much zero effort to do it. And here we go. You can have AI. Question is, can you take advantage of it? Do you have a work process to sort of pick up and follow up with it and actually do something with it? So that's being actionable. That's the question. The fact that we can do it today, absolutely yes for everybody. That's not a sort of technical issue today.
Thank you. I will go ahead and close us out here. I want to thank Abi, Vitaly, Jehoon. Appreciate your time, your thoughts, your inputs on this. Thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. We will have an upcoming webinar. Our next one, I think we're going to do sort of an ad hoc one whenever the FDA LDT announcement drops. We're going to be following that a day or two later, digest that information as quick as possible and bring you some of the best legal minds in the business on what that means for your lab. So we're watching that closely. Keep an eye out for notices on that. But thank you guys all for attending. Thank you to our guest speakers. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks for having us, John.
Yeah. See you.